Now, if you're interested in Essex-based crime stories, or true crime overall, please press the subscribe button to be notified of future videos. But please be aware, however, that some of the content of the videos may contain graphic or offensive images and language. I do find that generally makes people stay though, not leave. The following video uses extracts from the BBC News page entitled, "Man Jailed After 32-Hour Armed Siege in Newcastle, the 11th of November 2011. This is an article documenting the events surrounding a man called Dave Cawston, and the unsuspecting reader might casually continue the day safe in the knowledge that the police have arrested and detained what is otherwise portrayed as another unhinged person. However, is this the truth, or are we being told what we all want to hear in terms of trusting not only seemingly reputable media outlets, but also the police and government authorities whose actions in which we are all to believe as the gospel truth?" The article goes on to say, a man who barricaded himself into a house in an armed siege in Norfolk has been jailed for 3 years. David Cawston, 46, was arrested after a 32-hour standoff with police negotiators and armed response teams in Newcastle, which ended on the 6th of May. Cawston, of Newcastle, admitted 2 counts of possessing an air pistol with intent to cause fear or violence at Norwich Crown Court. It was claimed he felt frustrated over complaints to police. The article does not explain, however, why a person would be so frustrated over his police complaints being ignored to the extent of creating an armed siege situation. Let us take a moment to wonder why a person would create a situation of such high profile, and one that would ultimately make its way into, not only local, but national press. We could assume he is mentally unwell, and making a mountain out of a molehill in terms of his police complaints being ignored. This seems to be the reported narrative. Or we can consider that this might be a man on the brink of desperation, looking for the police protection of his own life and those around him, and being ignored. After giving information he has on the criminal underworld, information so dear that a man would be fearful of even the authorities he is complaining about, to find your continued insistence for help and protection be ignored. If this would be the case, wouldn't you create a situation so high profile that people would remember your name again should you somehow end up with a later news headline sporting your name, documenting your untimely death? It takes someone who is naturally suspicious, or somewhat clued up, depending on your stance, to decide to look between the lines and really see what is going on. Essex Crime and Forensics is taking that chance right now, and once again, you may be wondering why we are covering a non-Essex case. Well, having previously heard of Dave Cawston a few years ago, as he has links with the Essex underworld, this article made us all think why someone who has worked the doors of dodgy Essex nightclubs, rubbed shoulders with the best of the Southeast criminal fraternity, and is not short of being a capable man himself, would be creating waves of such an extent. Surely, looking at Cawston's past, he would be shying away from the police at all times. He is usually straddling the other side of the law, and it would need to be something extreme and serious for him to be. What is all intents and purposes, grassing, to then grass on person or persons in his criminal circles, and then be ignored, puts poor Dave in a very sticky situation to say the least. The article reads, the court heard armed police were called when Cawston telephoned officers, saying he had a weapon. Cawston then barricaded himself inside the property and left a list of demands to police on a shed roof. At one point, Cawston came out of the house and told police, "Fill me full of bullets," the court was told. It was claimed Cawston did not point the gun at police but had tapped the window with the weapon, which later turned out not to be loaded. The article then continues. Prosecuting, Nick Methold said Cawston had been frustrated over information he claimed to have on criminal issues. This is poignant because why would someone be so frustrated over informing on criminal issues unless they either were seriously concerned for their own well-being, or had something to gain from the information being given, such as in consideration for helping the police in the hope that you would be given a lesser punishment for another crime you have been detained for. The latter is not the case for Cawston, who was, otherwise, leading a normal life. The former is much more likely. It could be very much assumed, given Cawston's past misdemeanors, that he wasn't giving information on the basis of being a top-notch, crime-free, neighborhood watch ambassador. Ian James, on behalf of Cawston, said his client had wanted to help police, not thwart them. Again, this sentence only goes to reinforce that Cawston was trying to help in some way for no other gain than to get person or persons he was naming off the streets. What Cawston's ultimate gain is remains unknown, but with the underworld whispers rife, and social media recently flowing with suggestions, we know it is to do with some very serious people. Sentencing Cawston, recorder of Norwich Judge Peter Jacobs said, "For reasons not fully explained, you seem to lose all sense of self-control." Again, why would a man seemingly lose all control? This echoes back to the idea that the bigger the situation, the greater the seriousness, the bigger the shock, the more likely it is your name will be remembered and the less likely it is that you will come to an untimely end. You, hopefully, are harder to get to. This is where the article itself finishes, and although nothing is said in a particularly derogatory way about Cawston, only the reporting of the actions surrounding the situation, we have to suppose that the BBC and other media outlets are only reporting via the information they are fed. These outlets will be the police, government, and judicial reports and statements. All of this is very fair and the journalism behind this isn't in question. However, how accurate are the reports and statements that come from these official bodies? We all hope that the police and justice system we live our lives by, are bound to their rules and laws, is one which is fair and just. We all know that there will be the odd rotten apple amongst the system, and that some police staff have criminal associations that extend further than in a professional capacity. That, sadly, is life, but what we seem to have experienced, certainly in a historical sense at least, is a huge collective of police corruption. This is something that appears to be a common thread amongst many of Essex crime and forensics content, and we aren't the only one. To give context to this case, let us look at Dave Cawston's life prior to this documented event. Dave Cawston was working the doors at a well-known Essex nightclub. This nightclub was later known in the media by the security firm which ran the doors. And why was it of interest to the media? It was the security outfit run by Tony Tucker, one of 3 gangsters executed in a gangland shooting in Rettendon in 1995. Cawston claims he was due to take part in an armed robbery in 1989, but it took place without him for an, almost comical, reason. Cawston's mum had sought advice via a family friend, a policeman, that Dave was involved in this plan, and he was consequently arrested just prior to the robbery for driving a stolen car. Coincidence? Possibly, and possibly not. Tucker was known for spreading rumors after this event that suggested Cawston was a grass. This didn't help Cawston in the locale, and explaining that it was actually his dear old mum that caused the problem didn't help his street cred either. Fast forward some years later and an informant by the name of link-Jasper claims that he knows who killed Tony Tucker, and his 2 other counterpart criminals, Pat Tate and Craig Rolfe, in the Range Rover shootings of 1995. Jasper, a deep-rooted member of the East London criminal underworld, was facing charges for an armed robbery by the police at Forest Gate Police Station. Did he have some good information on another crime that would see him being favored for a lesser sentence for this crime? Well, yes he did. Jasper claims that the men were shot due to Tucker's theft of money he was meant to be laundering through the clubs he ran the security for. This money was supposedly from an armed robbery that took place in 1989. The men who robbed the Group 4 security van had been jailed and released in 1994. Tucker was keeping the proceeds of this robbery safe and cleaning it for use when the men were released. Allegedly, around the same time, Tony also bought a huge bungalow with grounds on the Fobbing Road, which came with stables, security fencing, and dogs that prowled the perimeter. Tucker paid for it outright with cash. Wanting their money and being told no did not sit well with the men who had served their time for nothing, and a hit was placed on Tucker's head, and was to be organised by Patsy Bolt-Eyes Clark. He would receive £140,000 as payment. This robbery was the same one Cawston missed, thanks to his dear old mum. Jasper tells of the how, when, and why, yet his claims were ignored. He maintained he was telling the truth, and was discarded without any of this information being investigated. Jasper was later shot in the face by an unknown perpetrator. The following is speculation only, however, we believe it is as close as anyone will get to the truth. Dave Cawston, for reasons we do not know, decided in 2009 to tell the police that he was part of the plan to rob the Group 4 van, but also that he was there when the plan was hatched to kill the Essex Boys in Rettendon. His claim is backed up by police-recorded information, yet his information was ignored. Is Dave the source mentioned in an upcoming documentary? The source is unnamed, but this has been widely accepted on social media posts and the timelines fit. If we take the information he has allegedly given, and the fact that Cawston was frustrated at not being listened to, we can completely understand why a man would, seemingly lose control, as quoted in the summing up in court. Jasper's more detailed and pertinent information was ignored and he was shot in the face. Dave's narrative adds context to the Jasper theory, naming people in the same circles. Cawston, we suspect, wished to avoid the same treatment and therefore took extensive measures to be listened to. Perhaps he hoped that once he was out of Essex police jurisdiction he would be taken seriously, but this risk did not pay off. He was now on his own with the potential of him being named as an informant of long-standing hardened criminals. The risk of getting through to them via corrupt police at this point was enormous. Historically, we know that there were many corrupt officers involved within the Rettendon murder case, and the forensics and timelines appear to not add up at all with the given official narrative of events. At trial, the people accused of the murder had only a vague motive for one, and almost no motive for the other, and there were no forensic evidence at all to place them at the scene. Cell site analysis, in its infancy, placed them there, yet it could have placed them in very many other places too. It was, in effect, one man's word against another, and with at least 4 police involved directly in the case being investigated for corruption and links with the dead when they were alive, it must be asked if the standing conviction of Steele and Worms is secure. Cawston's claims would have only added weight to that of Jasper's, and it would appear that that could not be afforded to happen. The Eastern Daily Press reported in 2011 and claimed that a Norfolk MP was in support of Cawston to the extent of passing information given to him by Cawston to the Serious Organised Crime Agency. Norwich Crown Court heard the siege was motivated by Cawston's desire to get the police's attention as he wanted to pass information on to them. The court was told Cawston felt he had been ignored by the authorities for years and was not being taken seriously by them. South Norfolk MP Richard Bacon, who was made aware of Cawston's situation, wrote to the Serious Organised Crime Agency (SOCA) in 2009. In the letter seen by the EDP sent to the then SOCA Director General Bill Hughes on October 2, 2009, Mr. Bacon said Cawston had sent him a large amount of material which he wanted to pass on to the police. Mr. Bacon passed on his concerns to the Chief Constable of Norfolk Constabulary. In the letter he wrote, "I believe Mr. Cawston should be taken seriously." In a documentary due to air in April 2023, the unnamed source claims that he does not think he will now be arrested for speaking out as the police have had the information he gave since 2011 and nobody has arrested him yet. It must be asked why, if the police and other authorities have had the information for 12 years, nothing has been acted on with regard to the apparently valid content which is so valid that a man would cause an armed siege and a member of parliament would back him up. Ahead of the documentary being aired, all this information and more has been submitted to the CCRC for review on the Rettendon murders conviction. This new collective information has been collected, collated and investigated by an independent group of high-profile ex-detectives and the documentary is much anticipated. Will Steele and Worms finally be exonerated? It can be hoped. Will the original investigation, dogged by police malpractice and forensic failings, be re-investigated? Unlikely. There will be no CCTV, no digital forensics and no scene to analyze. Cell site analysis at the time was analog, not digital, and phone records were only kept for a limited amount of time before being lost forever. Many other suspects, named or otherwise, could never be pinned to the crime forensically, and even with the Jasper and Cawston claims, it is, like Nichols' statement that convicted the defendants, one word against another by 2 people who, on paper, are untrustworthy criminals. If you like this video, and enjoy Essex crime stories, please press the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.